Welcome to Everything Life and Real Estate. Let's get started with our hosts, Linda McKissick and Dana Gentry.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Everything Life and Real Estate. I'm Linda McKissick.
And I'm Dana Gentry.
Hey, Dana. So excited today for our guest that you've bragged intensely about.
I know, my new friend, well, not new, but new-ish friend, Marcus Green. So thanks, Marcus, for being on.
Oh, it's my pleasure to be here. Thank you guys for having me.
I always like to say, Marcus, you were born and then what happened?
Born and then what happened? That's a good question. I think my mom would answer that question differently than me. I think I caused her a lot of stress as a kid. So you want to kind of you want me to give a little bit of a background from when I was born till now, huh?
Yep. Cliff note version.
The show Goonies, when he's sticking his hand in the blender and he goes all the way back in time. So I was born and raised in Utah to an incredible family, 5 boys, 1 girl. My dad is one of the hardest working people I've ever met. That I attribute my work ethic to him, which is one of my greatest assets in my life. Although he taught me a great work ethic, there was a lot of things in regards to money and some other things that maybe I didn't quite understand until later in life, how to view life differently in a bigger way, but it all roots back to my love to work, which I got from him. Growing up with 5 brothers, lots of fist fights and competition, which is part of my competitive spirit growing up, that I still show up every day to win, which I love. I'm really grateful for that.
See you and Matt in a fist fight, though.
Oh, it was a bad day for him when I finally hit puberty and was big enough to fight back. He took advantage of it when he was bigger than me. After high school, I served a mission for my church in Brazil. So I lived in Brazil for 2 years, serving the people down there, which was an incredible experience for me, taking my work ethic and then learning to view life through a different lens. Really helped me understand people in a new way and love people in a new way, that I really love that opportunity I had in my life. And then quickly after serving that mission in Brazil is when I met my beautiful wife, Chriselle, who is not only my wife, but my best friend that I love spending time with. And I get to cap every day with her on one end and the other, which I really love. We have 4 beautiful daughters. So even though I grew up in a house of 5 boys and fist fights, that is not the household I'm in now. 4 daughters. My oldest one is in college. My youngest one is in elementary. And so we get every type of kid right now, which is a lot of fun. Business-wise is I've been in real estate for 23 years, licensed first in Utah, selling in Park City, Utah. Built my first investment company in Utah in 2007, 2008. When the market shifted, I went down to Arizona because the market shifted and I could buy property significantly cheaper in Arizona than Utah. I primarily focus on investment and developing transactions. So my team still operates at a high level in Arizona, real estate team, property management company, development company in Arizona. And then about 10 years ago is when I started getting opportunities to have leadership opportunities in Keller Williams. And bought my first market center. And my brother, Matt Green, and I are partners in multiple market centers in Utah now. And I focus most of my time on leadership and creating opportunities for my people. There's the summary of me.
Love it.
That's awesome.
That was perfect. I love that.
Go ahead, Dana.
I was just going to say, I love that you said one thing I really loved, that when you were in Brazil, your time in Brazil taught you how to understand people in a different way. And you're so great with people. Linda and I just did another podcast where she was talking about John Maxwell talking about emotional intelligence with people. And I just feel like, Marcus, you have that at such a high level. And that I never thought of maybe that coming from like an experience like that. But that was a great point.
Oh, yeah, thanks. It was living in a different, getting outside of your normal culture. And then honestly, learning a different language for me also made me understand words differently and how they applied to people. So I think those 2 things combined just really opened my eyes to a really beautiful side of life.
Yeah, along the same lines, my question was going to be, what is the number one thing that culture taught you or those people taught you?
Good question.
Yeah, it was such a different pace because there's obviously some very, very wealthy people in Brazil, and then there's very, very poor in Brazil. Where I lived and spent my time was dirt floors. A lot of places no indoor plumbing. So I got to interact with some people that had very different life circumstances than I did, and yet they were some of the happiest people that I'd ever spent time with. And at first, it was almost like this disconnect of like they can't really be this happy because they don't have these things, which I think that's part of the challenge and how we're raised, particularly over the last decade, which has been such a huge run up, is just the expectations of things and wanting things and needing things is so prevalent. When if you really strip it all back to what life is really about and what we actually really need, it's a lot of this other stuff is just extra. And they just embodied that, which I really loved. So every day was just a joy interacting with these people because there wasn't this underlying initiative of what they were trying to accomplish in the conversation. It was just legitimately, let's connect.
Yeah. I read this book. I think it's that like what you can accomplish in 5 years. It's like one of my favorite books, and I don't have it in front of me to like quote it, but they did a survey on like it's kind of like the wheel of life, and you do all the numbers and then you divide them out. And anyway, the premise of it was though the number of like the top 5% wealthiest people in the world and the number of the people who live in like the huts in some part of China was the same. And so it was just talking about how like we sometimes think we have to have all this stuff, you know, to be happy, but really like they were just as happy, if not happier on some points.
Yeah, I think they nailed that in the book. The one thing I had Jay Papasan on my podcast last week, which was such a fun conversation, but I really love in that book how they are very clear that happiness is happiness and wealth is wealth. And it's important for us to understand they are two very separate things.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. Cause I think people can either go somewhere like that and see that and say, okay, so I'm not going to do I'm not going to go for anything. I'm not going to be driven. I've often wondered, because well, first of all, I think God's going to call some of those people to the mission fields. You know, I'm always praying, not me, God, not me, God. Not me. In Morocco, when it was really hard, I'm like, not me, God, not me, God. Anyway, thank God it wasn't me.
Better. He knew better.
He knew better. But I just was thinking this. I was coming back from my longevity doctor, and I had played pickleball yesterday, and I hadn't been. And I was thinking how much joy it was just to go spend time with 8 other women and rotate around and play pickleball. And I'm thinking, you know what? It truly is those real simple things. If you've got your health and you've got relationships, money's just the icing on the cake or the bigger things you can do. But I think everybody feels those moments when you go, oh, I get it. This is really the happiness. It's just these real, and none of this cost me that much money. I bought a racket. They brought the balls. I mean, you know what I mean? I think we get those moments and we forget, we just go right past them and instead of realizing, wow, this is real happiness. I think
you're right. If I reflect back on the kind of those moments of like, oh man, I just feel happy inside. Most of them have to do with the people I'm around, locations I'm at, but not necessarily the money I'm spending at that moment, or have to do with like, oh, this was a huge win for me right now, financially and business. Like those moments are joyful, but not that same moment that you're talking about where you're just like, I'm happy right now.
Yeah. You get them when you're serving other people. We just did our Mimi and Pop Pop camp the other day. And we took my grandkids to Salvation Army because we always give them a donation this time of year.
I forgot to ask you to open with how that went. Dang it. Okay,
we'll do it on another.
This is so cool. Linda and Jim do this every year with their grandkids. They have like a full day of Mimi and Pop Pop camp. And they teach them like lessons and they take them places. And it's like Linda plans it the whole year.
Awesome.
Yeah.
You have to listen to the podcast to get all of it. But the point was, we said on the slogan of our shirt this year was create big lives, serve others, be kind to everyone. Because what I wanted them to feel is how it feels to serve others. Because that's another one of those moments that if you our pastor used to call it glimpses of heaven.
Oh.
Like, he said, like in your happiest moments, that's your glimpses of even an inkling of what heaven is going to be like. Right. So I think when we serve others and you have that, and I asked my grandkids when we left, I said, how did you feel being, and it wasn't a big deal, but it was, it was there and serving others. And they were like, it feels really good. And I want them to catch that moment, because otherwise like you said, you'll tie it to something else, some accomplishment or some whatever.
I think that's such a beautiful statement you just said that you got from your pastor, the little glimpses of heaven. Because I think that is true. I think sometimes we think heaven is almost something we can't fathom or describe, but I think it's very directly tied to those little happy moments of life. And just a thought that popped in my head as you were saying that is how many days have I been so consumed with the tasks at hand that maybe I had blinders on like this, and there were glimpses of heaven right around me that I may have missed. Mm-hmm. So I just a mental note to myself is to be more purposeful, to recognize those glimpses of heaven every day.
Yeah, so true.
That's great. Love that. Okay, well, totally switching gears, not on the glimpses of heaven. Let's talk about the industry for a second. It's a little far.
Might be glimpses of the other.
Yes, right. You beat me to it.
We are definitely in a wild time right now. And I know you and I have talked a lot about the kind of what's going on in our industry and stuff right now, but would love your take on it. And what are you communicating to your agents? Because I know you're such a great leader to them, and I'd love for you to share that with our listeners too.
Yeah, thanks. I'd love to get some of your guys' take on this as well. I think that a couple things. One, in a more retrospective look at it, I look back at a 23-year career in the industry. I've had the blessing to be through several market shifts. Yeah. And one of the things I'm really grateful for is in the moment, I may not have recognized that some of my biggest moments of personal growth and business growth, which to me, they're two separate things. Some moments of personal growth and business growth came at the tail end of working positively through a market and industry shift. Yeah. And so I can't help but be a little excited about who do I get to become through this, which obviously will take some effort and dedication and reinvention and rethinking some of my habits to earn that. But I can't help but be a little bit optimistic and excited about that. On the other side of that is, just like everybody else, there are some nerves and some anticipation around it, because there is some element of the unknown, and it's been pretty comfortable the last 5-6 years, right? So sometimes you have to be okay getting uncomfortable. And I think we just have to embrace that right now. The problem I see in the industry with how people are showing up is, when you feel uncomfortable, you're either the person that leans in and takes action, or you're the person that freezes. And there is no, I'm going to stand still and wait. You're either progressing towards a better version of you, or you're regressing, in my opinion. And this idea of sticking your head in the sand and saying, I'll wait to see, does not leave you in the same spot and same opportunity that you've had historically. And so, in my opinion, it's really important to delineate that there are two shifts going on. One is a market shift, and one is an industry shift. Yeah. And it's really easy, I think, for people in our industry, particularly that haven't been through it before, to kind of merge them into one conversation. And to me, they're two separate things. Market shift is more focused on what's affecting supply and demand and buyer and seller's reaction to the market right now. And industry shift is, how is business going to be done tomorrow? Yeah. And it just so happens that we're in a perfect storm where we have to be thinking about both of those. But the way we approach both those problems has got to be independent of each other. The way an agent approaches a market shift is, you're really wearing an agent hat, which is, really, there is no magic button around that, in my opinion. It is getting back to the basics of what you should have been doing all along. And then the industry shift is then embracing what is the consumer going to require of me tomorrow, and how are they going to access that value, and am I going to be the conduit for that value? Yeah. So I think there's kind of two separate pieces looking at it that way, which I can go down either one of those routes that you guys want to. But any thoughts back from you guys on kind of like how I'm delineating it into two separate, I'll say, challenges / opportunities?
Mm-hmm. I'd like to have you start first with the consumer, kind of your thoughts on the consumer. And is it something that the picture is clear enough that we could even be preparing for that one? Or should we just get back to business and get to work until there's something totally solidified? because what'll happen is people will go, "Well, I don't know. Do we need to do it this way? Do we need it this way?" And
Yeah.
I think instead we solve to me, market problem, and then we deal with the consumer problem. But I would love your take on that.
Yeah, I think that's probably the right way to think about it, because the market shift right now is what is the immediate problem. It's the one that's touchable in front of you, right? That's got to be managed to some extent before you can reach out to the future problem of how much is the now problem managed enough that I can take some of my brain energy and give it to the problem of tomorrow. And so I think you're thinking through that correctly. And I think the big missed opportunity from a lot of agents right now is they don't realize that, and I'm curious to hear if it's been the same way from you guys, but the last several years, it's actually been a little frustrating in some extent when you reach out to your clients to talk to them about real estate, you being the real estate expert. The conversation really has been them telling you everything they know about the market, right? Because they watch Property Brothers and they know everything that's going on. And it didn't take anyone really a bunch of study to understand what was happening in the real estate market. You buy something and the market's going up and you're going to make money on it. So the opportunity for the agent right now is, for the first time really in a decade, the consumer is sitting in a spot of uncertainty. And where there's uncertainty, somebody is going to come in with some new information to create certainty. And when you are the person that creates certainty and adds value in a loving and compassionate way, you build a relationship. Yep. And that relationship, if you do it right, is going to pay you for years and years and years to come. And so this, to me, is the big missed opportunity from agents right now. The problem is a lot of agents feel like, I don't know what to say, so I'm also sitting in uncertainty. Is we need to get certain enough about our value, maybe not have a crystal ball to be able to say this is what's going to happen, but be certain enough of you being the ongoing solution that you can inject yourself into that conversation and say, hey, I know how you're feeling. I know what questions are in your mind right now. Because the problem is that some of the consumers don't even know what question to be asking right now. Yeah. Historically, if they had a question, they'd call and ask a question. They don't even know what question to be asking right now. So we need to actually take the question to them and then provide them the answer. Yeah. But from that position, I can't do anything in my market to show up tomorrow and actually create more inventory, because there's things outside of my control, right? Federal policy, interest rates, people's economic situations. I can't control any of that, but I know there's going to be a certain number of transactions, and I believe in the long-term longevity of my market. So what my focus has got to be right now is not selling another house tomorrow, but building a moat around my people of value that they're not getting anywhere else.
Yeah. I totally agree with that, Marcus. And in the business planning clinics that I just taught the last few weeks, we touched a ton on, like, people aren't going to trade a 2% for a 7% unless one of those reasons that we heard from Dr. Lawrence Yoon. They had a baby, they had a death, they got a divorce, they got married, whatever the reasons are. And You're only going to know those things if you're in really deep relationship with the people in your database. And I just remember going back to, I don't remember if it was Gary or who said it, but we have to not only up the quantity of touches, but the quality of touches. Because I think when you talk about what are consumers going to require of me tomorrow, I think they don't want us to just sell them another house. I think it's like they need us to be their everything, because just like you said, they're either hearing something on Inman or Zillow, or because they watch HGTV or whatever, they don't know what the heck is going on. Mm-hmm. So they're looking to their realtor to be not just, what do they say? You're not just a realtor, you're the realtor. And there's a huge difference. Like, I challenge my people to go through their database, go line by line, and truthfully answer, are you a realtor to them, or are you the realtor to them? And that's a very eye-opening experience if you are truthful when you do it with your database.
And I think that's exactly right. And our actions and how we show up in our industry over the next couple of years needs to change the consumer's mindset to think, when they think the word realtor, that means a real estate someone to take me through a real estate transaction. Yeah. This is something that is going through my head a lot right now, is thinking through, like, okay, every single person in my database that's living, they all woke up today. And what was going through their mind that has to do with real estate, period? Was it someone was walking down the hall and their smoke alarm was chirping? That has nothing to do with buying and selling a house. But I need to start thinking through, am I providing solutions for all things real estate related? If one of my clients woke up this morning and their house, a pipe froze and their house flooded, is their first thought, my realtor, my real estate professional is the resource to solve this problem? And that's jumping into the industry shift, is I believe that is where our industry is going, is that as agents, we've got to expand our value proposition in such a way that it's all things, anything you could think of in relation to your relationship with real estate happens through me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even if it's not about real estate, I just had a girl on the phone earlier, and she was saying, I'm struggling because I don't really know what to say. And I said, we struggle with what to say because you think what you're going to say is going to make someone buy that does, or sell that doesn't want to buy or sell. And we can't do that. None of us are good enough to do that. We need to quit. And part of them, a lot of them, I think, are worrying about the world out there, the way the market really is. And it's an individual thing. It's a human to human. And so one of the examples I gave her is, it doesn't matter which problem you solve for them. When you bring value and give to the world, you create beholdenness and reciprocity. And beholdenness and reciprocity makes another human want to do something back good for you. So I just took her through an example, and I said, well, first of all, she was worried that when she talked to somebody, they were going to say, well, it's not a good time to buy or whatever. And she immediately went into going to sell them on why, oh yeah, because it used to be this rate. I said, why don't you think about what you can ask them? Yeah. What is it about the interest rate that concerns you as it relates to you and your real estate needs? Get deeper and ask more questions, because you can't even begin to serve them or help them until you really understand, peel it back a little bit and figure out 99% of what they're actually worrying about you could solve, either through a buy down, through the right mortgage person, or they've heard something that's not even remotely close to true. Yeah. But we tend to want to go into sell and tell, and what we should go into is consultative and ask. And then one of the things I took her through is, I said, if you don't like cold calling 101, I said, one of the things I love to do is teach. So if it's a strength that you have, I said, you just told me a little bit ago that you were in the catering business before, and you were a small business owner. What do you think those small business owners need right now? They need the same thing you do. They need lead generation ideas. Yeah. So while you're going through it, what if you just took a group of them with it too? You teach them what you're learning, because it holds you accountable to apply it. You're filling a value gap and a need that they have, and you're raising your level of value to that person.
Yeah.
So I think we get so hung up on trying to solve, problems that we assume we know what they are. We don't even know what they are until you ask great questions of people, and you unattach yourself to a magic script or a magic verbiage that's going to cause someone to do something that you physically can't cause them to do.
Yeah. I think you nailed it. I think that's exactly right. I think I've for a long time, I've thought about, it's a big responsibility to be a leader. It's a big responsibility to be a parent. And I often think about and parenting is leadership in my opinion. I often think what is my responsibility? What do I want to teach them? And honestly, someday I hope you guys get to meet my wife, because she's as close to a glimpse of heaven as you're going to get on earth. But I know she's teaching all the wonderful things to my kids. And I think back to say, what do I want to give my kids? And I used to identify 2 traits that I want to give my kids. I've recently added a third one. And to me, it goes really in alignment, Linda, with what you're saying is in my mind. And I think this goes for anyone, not just for my kids, but if people could focus on learning how to communicate at a high level, which communication is two-way. Too many times we're going into a communication and making it a one-way conversation. Just really learning to communicate and listen, which leads into the second one of being a phenomenal problem solver. And I used to tell my kids, if you can learn to communicate and solve problems, the world is yours. You can have whatever you want. The third one I've recently added to that list, which I think isn't covered by the other 2, but I think is really important, is being able to identify opportunities. Because I can't believe how many people are walking over opportunities that they're not seeing them for what they really are. But in my opinion, if people could just focus on the skill set of saying, am I a really a good communicator? And to your point again, Linda, that's not being good at telling people things. It's, are you a great communicator? Do you listen more than you speak? Do you know how to ask phenomenal questions? And when you do that, you're going to identify what problem needs to be solved. And then do I have the skill set to help solve that problem, leading with value that's going to serve that person? And then through that, can I identify opportunities for that person and me along the way? So in my mind, I've kind of identified those as like the three most important skill sets that I'm focused on trying to pass on through leadership and parenting.
And also for agents, this is great, because even with the girl I communicated with earlier, she has all the answers inside of her.
Mm.
She just doesn't know she has all the answers inside of her, right? And
Linda, she needed you to have a brainstorm session with her. Like we were just talking on our last podcast, Marcus, we were saying a lot of times, like Linda and I both need to add brainstorming time to our calendar for 2024 because we don't make the time to do it. And like, we have all these things, but it's like when you can talk them out with somebody else is when it, comes to life and it multiplies.
Yes. Yep. I love that.
Yeah. I love those three things. And it's so true. And, we call the one that is the one-sided conversation in Fierce, we call it versations, and con in Spanish means with. We just forget the with part. And when we teach profit share, one of the things that we say is 80 to 90% of the talking should be done by the other person. If you're doing any more than that and you're feeling great about matter of fact, I even got off the call with this agent and I thought, okay, Linda, I don't feel that great about it because I felt like I was teaching her about questions and I was talking more than I was asking questions. So I made a mental note to myself, okay, you just violated your one rule. I didn't, I immediately started giving her advice instead of asking her more great questions so she would self-discover.
Yeah.
Funny story when I was learning that concept, because I thought I was an incredible salesperson as a young person. And what I was just an aggressive little young hustler. But someone finally taught me the importance of listening. And I literally remember for a long time that I would have a cue for myself that I would speak for something. And then I would literally put one hand underneath my leg while I was sitting as a cue of like, it's not your turn to talk.
Yeah.
Wait. And it's just like, no one picked it up but me, but it was like, I talk with my hands and all of a sudden my hand would go underneath my leg. Like, okay, this is your cue. Listen.
That's like yesterday when I played pickleball, my pickleball partner, I'm new to pickleball, so I don't really know all the rules or anything. And I kept wanting to, hit it back over without a bounce. And she said what she does is she says, bounce, bounce. And then she knows she can hit it in the air. And I thought, you could relate that to the same kind of thing you're talking about, bounce, bounce, lets them talk. And then you can have something that you say, but I think that's really good because it's not going to be natural for most of us, especially if we already know in our mind what the people should do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we want to jump in and fix it for them quickly. Okay, you kind of touched on a little bit these two more things I wanted to chat with you about real quick. What do you think great leaders are going to do today and like moving into next year?
In my opinion, a great leader right now is questioning how great of a leader they are for the solution tomorrow. I think anybody that's proclaiming how great of a leader they are right now, they may have been a great leader, but I think it's all of our responsibility as leaders to ask the question, am I the leader for tomorrow? Which means, am I doing the self-work to be the leader moving into this? I also just taught business planning clinics in several different market centers in different states. And one thing I always add into the business planning clinic at the end of it is I always include a training around the personal growth plan.
Yeah.
And kind of that movement is saying, you've just put together a business plan for next year, something you've probably never accomplished before, or you're going to you may have accomplished it before in an easier environment. So now the question becomes is who do you need to become to be the person that's going to execute that game plan?
Yeah.
So for me, and I'm doing the same thing for myself right now is questioning what leadership traits have served me well so far, and are they still the traits that will serve me moving forward? And where have I come up short as a leader, or what's worked for me in the past that I don't know with certainty if it's going to work for me in the future. So honestly, I'm doing a lot of self-reflection right now around my own leadership, not like questioning, am I a good leader? I believe I've led well.
Yeah.
Not perfectly. Like I've led well because I care, but who do I need to become to be the leader of tomorrow? So I think that's step number one, in my opinion, is if you want to be a really great leader in the market that's coming, it's time to really challenge your own leadership and ask the question. One of the things that I love to do personally is I love to choose some very challenging tasks that push me outside of my comfort zone. I don't know if you guys have read the book Comfort Crisis, which is a really great book that talks about just like the importance of us doing things outside of our comfort zone, that just, it forces you to expand your thought process in your brain. Part of my personal mission vision statement that's up on my wall, one of the lines says, the most difficult tasks yield the most valuable lessons, so I love choosing these tasks that put me outside of my comfort zone. And I think that's important for a leader to do, is if you're comfortable in coaching and leading because you've done it, then you haven't done it in tomorrow's market. So for a shorter answer, I guess that my question would be, number one is you need to reimagine and question your leadership and ask, who do I need to become to be a great leader? And number two is, what are you doing to get uncomfortable? Because you're going to be leading and coaching people that are uncomfortable. Is you need to be uncomfortable and pave a way through that uncomfort to lead them through it.
Mm-hmm.
Linda, that kind of reminds me about Dr. Ryan's talk about like how some stress is good for you.
Mm-hmm. And the 4 C's.
And the 4 C's, yeah.
If anybody took their life and went backwards and said, how did I get here? You'd find a place where you made a commitment that made you very uncomfortable. And that took a lot of courage. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Love that. Yep. Yeah, okay, Marcus, before we talk about your podcast, and because we're almost, we got a couple more minutes.
And I got one question before we finish.
Okay, go for it, Linda.
I'm going to ask you, remember what we said about John Maxwell's questions? Who do you know that Dana and I should know?
Good question. You might have to think about it.
Good question. I know Dana, you and I have rubbed shoulders with a lot of the same people recently, which I'm really loving that new circle of influence. Let me think about that for. Let me think about that for a minute. I'll reach out to you and let you know who I think, because I don't want to just throw an answer out. I want to think about it and give you someone that I think could have a really good impact on you this year.
Yeah, and you know a lot of great people. Okay, perfect. So talk to us really fast, because I feel like, Marcus, you do such a great job of, you have your mortgage company and the market centers and all those things, and you have your family, which you've talked about. And I feel like you do such a good job of being intentional with, like, you went to the play with you're always doing intentional things. So talk a little bit about balance, if you will.
Yeah. And thank you for saying that you think I do well at that, because it's a constant juggling game, particularly when you're growing companies like we are and in a challenging market, right? It's so easy to become consumed in the thing that's on fire the most. And we know our family's the most forgiving people, so we tend to step on those relationships, which is so backwards to how we should be thinking. And so there's two things that I think are really important. I hate to reference the book, The One Thing, twice, but I'm going to, because that the principle in there about learning to counterbalance just really changed my perspective on that, because I used to beat myself up all the time, because the work ethic I talked about at the beginning that I got from my dad is one of my greatest blessings, but it's also one of my greatest curses. Yeah. I will work. I'll just go. And the truth is the way we run our worlds, guess what? We never drive home at the end of the day and everything's checked off the list. I don't remember the last time that my to-do list was done. That just is not part of the world we live in. And so if we let that take over, it's easy just to work through it and burn relationships. And there's been times in my career that I've done that. So that idea of counterbalancing was really important. And so if I pulled up my calendar and showed it to you right now, you would see, and some people criticize me for this, but you would see in order some very specific things that are important to me. Number one is I always put my personal non-negotiables on my calendar first. Personal non-negotiables for me are anything to take care of my family and self-care. Mm-hmm. So every day my kids are out of school, I know about it well in advance. Every vacation we're going on for the year, like my wife and I are going through 2024 planning right now, we're just going to identify every vacation we're going on next year, buy the tickets, plan it all out, and know that it's done. Every workout that I am going to do next year is already on my calendar, and I know what I'm doing in that workout. Thursday nights for me are one-on-one date nights with my kids. Friday nights are date nights with my wife, already on my calendar for the year. Now, some of those in my planning meeting with myself on Sunday, sometimes I adjust those, but they're on my calendar, so I know they're a priority and I can adjust them. And then the third thing I think is really important is a lot of times as agents and entrepreneurs, we forget the difference between being a CEO in our business and being the technician in our business. And it's really important for us to have that CEO time within our business. And so to me, after I get my personal non-negotiables, my family time on my calendar, to me, that's the next thing that must be on your calendar. So like on my calendar, and not to say this is exactly how it should be done, but on Sundays at 5:30, I have a CEO meeting with myself. That's kind of my bookends for the week before and the week coming up, where I go through my 411, my goals for the week. I relook at my GPS, my personal mission vision statement. Every night at 8:15, I have a 15-minute meeting with myself to close out my day. So it just happens to be 8:15 when my kids, we've eaten dinner, they're kind of getting ready for bed. And I've got this little spot of moment where I can go kind of run through a checklist of items for myself. And then every month I have a day of close out the month. And every quarter I take a day for close out the quarter. Every year I take a 3-day weekend for close out the year and set up the year coming. So to me, all that's on my calendar. And then it sounds like a lot, but then you surprise yourself of all this other room that's on your calendar for other things, which that's when the technician gets to show up in my world. So for me, I know that's a simple and may sound like a simple answer or a complex answer to some people, but to me, you have to live off of a calendar with all the things we have going on, and your calendar is a reflection of what you deem important. Yeah. If nothing's on your calendar, then you don't know what's important to you. If just work's on your calendar, then work is what you're worshiping. It's what you're giving your time to. Yeah. And so to me, it was just this moment of clarity of saying, my calendar and my to-do list should reflect what's most important to me. Someone should, not knowing me, be able to look at my calendar and deem what I value in my life.
Yeah.
Reminds me of the big rock exercise, where if you put the big rocks in first, more stuff will fit. Whereas if you wait and try to fit the big rocks later, there's just no room for them.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, and I just think the key takeaway for me on that is, I mean, you took the time to plan it out, which I think is what most people won't do. And then they look up and they're like, oh crap, it's December. And where did the whole year go? I didn't do this or didn't do that. So I think it
also reminds me of John's two things that you and I always try to remind ourselves of, is preparation and reflection. We're like, dang it. Dang it.
Yeah, Marcus John Maxwell says the bookends of success are great preparation on the front end and great reflection time on the back end. And Linda and I both are not great at either one of those. So we are really intending to get better at them, though.
Good. I'm going to hold you accountable to it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, as we wrap up, tell them about your podcast. And I love the name. So just tell people how they can find you and tell a little bit about your podcast.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for giving me the platform to do that. So my podcast is called The Whole Enchilada. You can find it on any podcast platform, or go to thewholeenchilada.biz. And no, it's not a Mexican cooking podcast, even though I do love Mexican food. Ultimately, the premise behind The Whole Enchilada is a big part of my career early on is I was chasing some people that were put on a pedestal in our industry that I just looked up to immensely, until I realized a lot of the rest of their life was in shambles. And it caused me to ask the question of, do I really want that if everything else has to be in shambles? And so then I started leaning into this conversation of, we hear about people talking about a balanced life. And then I think the misnomer there is we think a balanced life is being okay with mediocrity across all things. And I'm not comfortable with that either. And so the premise behind The Whole Enchilada is I'm a big believer that we get one life to live, and it is the greatest gift from God. And his expectation for me is to make the most of it. And so for me, the idea of The Whole Enchilada is that you can live an elevated life across multiple platforms. You can live an elevated life spiritually and in business. You can live an elevated life in business and in health. You can live an elevated life in health and relationships all at the same time, but it takes effort. It takes purpose. So who The Whole Enchilada is for, honestly, it's for me. It's for me to learn. I'm on a journey to become the best version of me, because I see it inside of me and I want it to come out. And what I do with The Whole Enchilada is I invite people to go on that journey with me. And so some people may lean into it and think I don't like this conversation because we jump around a little bit on different topics. But what I'm doing is I'm focused on topics that are trying to evolve me, hoping that people are on the same journey with me. So if that sounds intriguing to you, I'd love to see you be part of our community in the Whole Enchilada. And I think the message they get here with you guys is very similar.
Yeah. Love that. I think that's awesome. Super good. Linda and I have guests that we want to selfishly learn from too. So we do the same thing.
And we don't have time any other time, so we schedule it in on the podcast. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's the way to do it.
We get to catch up, talk to each other, say what we've ordered from Amazon this week, and then ask great questions to people that we want to learn from. That's pretty much the premise of everything life in real estate.
Yeah.
That's sharing, to share with each other what you're ordering off Amazon. Good for you guys.
Yeah, I run into people all the time to go, thank you. I now go to Stretch Lab 2 or 3 days a week because of you. I said, hey, it's for your good.
Linda, every person I've talked to now because of us is wearing an Aura ring, and like everyone's asking for one for Christmas. I'm like, we got to figure out how to get sponsorships on this stuff or something.
Right?
We're not going to get that stuff. Awesome. Well, Marcus, I can tell now exactly why Dana's been so excited about you. So love hanging out with you, love learning. I'm sure we could brainstorm even many more hours between us.
Yeah, we'll have to have you back. Marcus, also, how can they find you? Like Instagram, email? If somebody wanted to reach out to you, how would they do that?
Yeah, either go to the wholeenchilada.biz and hit the connect with the network, or I am on Instagram personally at MarcusGreen77, or on Facebook. They can look me up and find me. But I would love to hear from any of your listeners and see what I can do to help support them.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being here. This is so great.
Thank you, Marcus. And remember,
you guys.
The subscribe button, please go ahead and do that now. And the greatest compliment you could pass on to Dana and I is to pass this podcast along to someone who you think would benefit from these types of conversations. And if you have a challenge, a guest, or an opportunity that you'd like to share on the podcast, be sure and reach out to us at info@everything life and real estate. Dana, I guess I'll see you next week.
Sounds good. See you then.
Be sure to subscribe for more business strategies and tactics to inspire you to live an abundant real estate life. Don't forget to rate and review so we can bring you the best content. Find this and other valuable information at everythinglifeandrealestate.com.